$97,000. That's what this woman in a neon pink suit was shouting at me at 6:30 in the morning, standing right on my own dock. Her bulldozer already chewing up my lakefront. The whole scene lit by that weird, misty glow you get just after sunrise on Lake Superior. I remember thinking, if this is how my day starts, somebody up there has a hell of a sense of humor. See, I hadn't even had coffee yet. And suddenly there's Marisol Blackwood, her last name sewn in gold on all the jackets her crew wore, screaming about demolition fees and threatening to flatten my 3-story timber mansion right into the water. I guess the smell of diesel mixing with lake air will always trigger my anxiety now, because that's the moment I realized this wasn't just some angry neighbor with an HOA clipboard. This was an organized hit. Her assistant, barely more than a shadow behind all the machinery, whispered something about federal waters. Marisol just waved her off, diamond anchor pin sparkling, like she owned the sunrise. But I noticed something else glinting too, a faded bronze plaque on my dock post, reading Great Lakes Maritime Heritage, protected since 1924. And right then, I spotted the Coast Guard's morning patrol boat sliding past, totally oblivious to the circus happening on my lawn. You just brought a bulldozer onto a Great Lakes International Waterway easement, I told her, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Fishermen were already pulling out phones. The water was so still, the mansion's reflection looked more real than the building itself, like the lake. Wanted to remember every bit of this showdown. My name's Garrison Knox, not that it meant much 8 months ago. Back then, I was just a contractor fixing up old boats, scraping by. My wife, Sarah, was still alive, taking morning swims and dreaming about a house on the water. I didn't know anything about the great aunt who'd left me the most contested piece of property on Lake Superior, a place Marisol Blackwood clearly wanted for herself. Marisol would roll up every day on her blinding white yacht, Queen's Gambit, barking orders about maritime law, which, let's be honest, she understood about as well as my neighbor's dog understands calculus. She threatened me with an hour to pay up, or she'd proceed with emergency condemnation. All of it nonsense. But she said it with enough force to rattle anyone not born stubborn. She called my place a navigation hazard, a blight, said I'd violated 17 HOA covenants. My great-aunt wasn't even part of their HOA. Every property is part of Crystal Bay Homeowners Association, she insisted, flashing a diamond watch, and I had to laugh. Established by whom? I asked. By me, by the board, by the community, she shot back. The bulldozer was parked by my boathouse. More boats started showing up, kayaks, fishing boats, the tour boat folks, even the guy who sells hot dogs by canoe. Seems everyone wanted to see if someone would finally stand up to Marisol Blackwood. I'd only been there 3 weeks, long enough to realize this wasn't just about property. My wife would have loved it, but after she drowned in a boating accident less than a year before, I'd done my best to avoid the lake. Now I was stuck defending it. Let me explain how things work, Marisol told me, dropping her voice like I was the kid in trouble and she was the principal. I've transformed this place into the most exclusive community on the Great Lakes. Your mansion is the last eyesore, standing in the way of my vision. I glanced around at the early morning lake, planes taking off, ships on the horizon, loons calling out as the sun burned off the last of the mist. Seems pretty magnificent already, I told her. She rattled off a list of fines, 15 grand's worth, for things like illegal dock extension, unapproved boathouse color, garish maritime blue. But I'd spent every night reading through Eleanor's papers. She'd documented everything, permits, letters from maritime agencies, receipts going back decades. The place was a fortress of paperwork. The crowd of boats had grown, a little floating jury. Marisol's nephew Brett pulled up in a lake patrol boat, ready to start handing out tickets. One old fisherman, Walter, laughed in his face. I've been fishing these waters since before your aunt played queen. I'll anchor where I please. Brett started threatening navigation violations, and Walter just grinned. Your aunt's the one. Breaking the law, son. Marisol started losing her grip. She threatened to have the harbor master shut down the whole inlet. The harbor master can't override federal law, I said, bluffing hard. She stepped close, voice low. I've removed 7 property owners who thought they could fight me. You'll be number 8. That caught my attention. What happened to those 7? They were improved, she said, made profitable by Blackwood Marine Development. Just then, the sun came out strong, burning off the rest of the fog. I made a decision. Give me a week, I told her. If I can't prove this property's exempt, I'll negotiate. But if I can, you leave and never come back. She actually laughed. You think you can outmaneuver me in a week? I have judges, lawyers, city council. Then you've got nothing to worry about, I said. She agreed. Fines would keep piling up, and if I lost, I'd pay everything. She barked at her crew to pull back and gave me 24 hours to remove my eyesore boat from her community waters. The flotilla drifted away, except Walter, who docked and said, "Son, you just poked a bear." I shrugged. Bears don't know much about maritime law. Walter chuckled and gave me a tip. Check the boathouse. Not the main floor, underneath. The place was bigger than most people's houses. I found a hatch hidden beneath the workbench. Ladder leading into a bunker. Concrete, waterproofed, desks stacked with documents, maps, legal files going back to the 1920s. In the middle was a leather journal. For my heir, who will arrive by. Water in a time of need. The enemy now wears pink and speaks of progress. But her greed is the same as those who came before. At the bottom, Treaty 314, Great Lakes water boundaries. International shipping lanes, properties exempt from local governance. That night, a storm rolled in, bigger than the one I was facing in court. Brett showed up again with 3 patrol boats, claiming they needed to inspect for storm damage. I blocked their way and called the Coast Guard using Eleanor's emergency protocol number. Treaty 314 protection claimed, I said, bluffing for all I was worth. To my shock, the Coast Guard took it seriously, told me to inform the intruders they were on their way and that any interference was a federal offense. Brett and his crew backed off. But Marisol's attack the next morning was different. A lawsuit for $100,000 in damages, an emergency hearing in front of her husband, Judge Blackwood. I called the only lawyer in. Eleanor's files, who might still be alive, David Reeves. He showed up in an ancient boat, studied the case, and grinned. If we prove treaty protection, Judge Blackwood's got no jurisdiction. We spent the night gathering Eleanor's mountain of documents. Court was a circus. Marisol's lawyers painted me as a menace. Marisol herself even teared up on the stand. But Reeves walked the judge through the treaty, the State Department confirmation, the decades of protected status. The judge turned red, then white, then had no choice but to dismiss the case. Federal treaty law trumped everything. Marisol stormed out, warning it wasn't over. Outside, Walter was waiting. You fought smart, not hard. Eleanor would be proud. But he hinted at a bigger secret, something called Operation Crystal Deep. Turns out Marisol wasn't just after the land. She was after something under the water. Old copper from World War II, sunk during a storm, worth a fortune. Eleanor had been its guardian, keeping it secret so it couldn't be stolen or misused. As Marisol's crew made their final, desperate move, barging in at night with excavation equipment, the Coast Guard swooped in, arresting them all. Evidence came out about their involvement in my wife's death. The courtroom drama turned to federal charges: theft, conspiracy, even murder. Marisol got 25 years. Her cronies scattered. The estate turned into a maritime heritage center. Now, the mansion stands as a museum, the boathouse a research hub, the lighthouse burns again for the first time in 60 years. I live on as caretaker, keeping Eleanor's promise. And every morning, I walk the dock and remember, this wasn't just about winning back my land. It was about standing up when everyone else looked away. So, if you've ever felt outnumbered, if you've ever stared down someone with all the power and thought, no way I win this, remember this story. Sometimes the lake keeps its promises. Sometimes the right fight changes everything. What would you have done in my shoes? Let's hear it. Drop your story, your take, your own battle for what matters. Because if enough of us stand up, maybe the next Marisol won't stand a chance.